Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with a taste of the best of Furtwängler, because a bunch of you asked for me to do something like that, and I have no problem doing that, based on my non-recommendation of the 55 CD Warner Furtwängler remastered, Furtwängler on record, whatever the heck it was, the big box thing that I reviewed. And I want to clear up a few things before we get to the titles, because reading your comments is always a fascinating exercise. Of course, I deleted the most hateful ones. You know, it shocks me how when I'm reviewing a specific product, I get hysterical stuff from people saying, "You hate Furtwängler." I don't hate Furtwängler. I don't even know the man. I don't respect him very much, but that's another issue. Hatred? No. Hatred? Absolutely not. I mean, I was talking about what was in that specific box. And what was in that box, and most people who commented who know what's in that box sort of agreed with me that it doesn't have his best stuff. It has some very good things and a lot of junk. And that was my point. And that's why I didn't recommend that you buy it, because who wants a lot of junk to get one or two good things, unless you're a hardcore crazy collector, in which case nothing I say makes any difference anyway. But for normal people, yeah, you want to know whether you're getting value for your money. And in that very box, I recommended all of the operas, the Valkyrie, the Fidelio, the Tristan, which is marvelous, everything by Wagner, a lot of his Beethoven, except where it was so chronically compromised by sonic considerations, or you could get better things later. A lot of his Brahms, his Schumann Fourth, his Schubert Ninth. I mean, there was a lot of good stuff there. There was a lot of junk. And a lot of the good stuff, as I pointed out, you could get elsewhere because it was licensed from Deutsche Grammophon or it came from somewhere else. I don't understand why any of that's controversial. I truly, truly do not. Unless you're one of those cult members who believes that everything that Furtwängler did is the greatest thing in the world, or some people have said just unbelievably asinine things like, oh, Furtwängler at his worst was 1,000,000 times better than anyone else at their best. I mean, that's just such horse shit. I don't embarrass yourselves by writing things like that. You're better off just not commenting, because first of all, I'm just going to delete it. And second of all, it's humiliating. You're supposed to love music. If you want to go worship at the shrine of Furtwängler, go ahead. But that has nothing to do with music. Nothing. Zippo. And I have no tolerance for it. No patience for it at all. You know, folks, I've been around a while. I've been doing this now for almost 4 decades. This is not my first rodeo. It is not my first encounter with the Furtwängler phenomenon. And I'm over it. I am so over it. My only interest is, what are the best performances of the work in question? And I don't give a damn who the performer is. I truly don't. I just want to hear excellence. And I will acknowledge it wherever I hear it, and whoever does it. So, with that said, let me talk about a couple more sets that may or may not be available, but I want to talk about them because it gives you a sense of where to look. One of you mentioned this box, which I have sitting here. I didn't bring it out for the last video, but I have it here. This is the complete RAIS recordings. These are post-war recordings. They date from 1947 to 1954. Some of them are in very, very good sound, and you get quite a collection of stuff. I'm not going through this box. I want to talk to you about it as typical of the problems that you have with these things. This is 12 CDs. Some of them are fantastic, and I'm going to talk about some of them, but in another context in a second. But let me just explain what the issue is. What does this say? It says, a living document of musical history, all concerts under the baton of Wilhelm Furtwängler recorded live by the RAIS Berlin. That's the radio in the American sector, by the way, the post-war division of Berlin, between May 1947 and May 1954. The original tapes from the RAIS archives have been made available for the first time, which means that these CDs offer the highest possible technical quality. Well, that's not true. It may be true, but one of the things that makes this so complicated and dealing with Furtwängler such a chore is that what really matters is how well those tapes have been preserved. The fact that you have original tapes means nothing if the acetate fell off of them, whatever that stuff was that, makes the sound go. They could be in terrible condition. There could be earlier copies that were made from them in years gone by when the tapes were in far better condition, and so they sound far better. And then what matters is how they're processed. So original tapes means nothing. Let's be clear about that little boondoggle. That's just marketing. And it may or may not be true. You have to listen. It depends on what the thing sounds like. And then you have to listen and compare it to all of the other versions of that thing that may have been released over the years, whether on pirate labels or regular labels. And this is what Furtwängler people do. And the reason I tend not to want to get into that is because I have nothing to say to Furtwängler people. They will tell you I have nothing to say to them. They don't want to hear from me. They don't care. They don't care about anything. They think it's perfectly fine to go and search out a dozen or two different versions of the same performance from the same date on a dozen different labels to see if one of them sounds marginally better than the other, and then to decide which one sounds the best. And then they won't even agree on that. That's what collectors do. There's nothing wrong with that. It's an amiable hobby. They're not serial killers. They're not out, hurting anybody. They're spending their time and their money amusing themselves. And that's just great. That's fine. But I don't think that it's a profitable way for people who may not know Furtwängler well to have to get into it. I just think it's painful and a terrible waste of time when you could be listening to wonderful, superb performances of exactly the same music by other people. Because the question is Furtwängler all that special? Well, the Furtwängler people say yes. And I understand that. For them, he is. I say he's no better or worse than any other major conductor. He was a major conductor. He did some stupendous work. He did more bad work than any other conductor of his reputation. Hands down. I think that's a fact. It's a fact that a lot of Furtwängler fans would admit, would readily concede, because he didn't have control over a lot of the material that's been preserved and would never have permitted it to be released. And so Furtwängler at his worst is as bad as anyone else at their worst. And at his best, he's as good as anyone else at their best. That's fair. He's part of the great continuum of performances that we have of all of this standard repertoire stuff and some other stuff besides. And that's all there is to it. And I think that none of that should be controversial to anybody who has not been brainwashed or, isn't a cult member. Remember, in their cults, classical music is full of them, as you know. We talk about them. I talk about them all the time. One of the reasons I start this channel is to be anti-cult of any kind. And I think that that's a healthy thing. I think the classical music industry needs that. I really do. And it's going to need it more because first of all, the whole critical profession has sort of vanished or is vanishing. And second of all, labels are disappearing. Everything is going to be out there. It's all streaming. It's all everyone just jaw-jawing back and forth, freely. And so I think that there is room out there for some, I hope, professional opinion lucidly expressed. And those of you who don't think I do that, you're welcome to go find somebody who does. Or nobody. You don't need anyone. And that's that. So with that in mind, I want to show you one set that really does give a terrific summary of a bunch of Furtwängler performances. Really some excellent performances. And it's very, very interesting because there's a remarkable consensus about what the best Furtwängler performances really are. It's not really a mystery. that's one of the things that I find so frustrating about this as well, because there's so many performances and duplicates and all this stuff. And, everyone's telling you, well, each one is wonderful because, on this date he did this and on that date he did that. And that's nonsense. That's nonsense. The consensus is in. And you can find a good chunk of it, 4 discs worth, 4 concerts. I think that's all most people need to get started on this. This is a Tara 4 thing. I don't know if it exists anymore. I suspect that it doesn't. Doing this with it so you can see it on both sides. So let me tell you what you get in here and from when, so you know. Listen carefully, take notes if you want. First concert, it's 4 concerts. You get the Eroica. This is with the Berlin Philharmonic. It was recorded on December 8th, 1952. Remember that date, December 8th, 1952, because they also have the one from the day before, from December 7th, 1952. And that one isn't nearly as good. It really isn't. You got to get the one from December 8th. And again, do you really want to make that effort? That's why I'm telling you what it is. I think it may also be in here. Let me just take a quick look. Just a quick little peeky, because some of these things are in this Audita set. And so, it may be easier to find them that way, because some of these things were here. Let me see. Hang on a momentito. Let's see. Beethoven Eroica. Where is the Eroica? It's here somewhere. Brahms, Hindemith, Harmony of the World. Okay, wait a minute. Here's one of them. Recording date. No, they don't have that one. It's 1950. Okay, so. And then there's another one here, which is, let's see. 8/12/52, which is 12/8. Yes, December 8th. That's the one that it is, because it's European style. So the date and month are the other way around. So there you go. That one is in here also. So that is a great example of the Furtwängler Eroica live at its best, in very good sound. And so there you go. Now, the next concert, Concert 2, has Symphonies 5 and 6. This is from let's see, 23/5, May 23rd, 1954. And these are also in here, for sure. May 23rd, 1954. They are exceptional, except I've never quite taken to his Pastoral Symphony. Not that it's not a fully realized conception, but it's heavy. It's heavy and flat-footed and rather joyless. And the slow movement is just too bloody slow, I think. I think the whole thing is too slow, actually. But his 5th is fabulous in that performance. It's a great 5th, maybe his best 5th. And Furtwängler was great with Beethoven's 5th, as I said in the other video. So that's concert number 2. Concert number 3, you get the 9th. And this is hands down his best version of it. Hands down. I mean, no question about it. First of all, it was recorded in 1954 on August 22nd, 1954. It's with the Philharmonia of London, which was one of the world's great orchestras, especially in the early 50s, after the war, when all the other major European orchestras were rebuilding, and Walter Legg put together the Philharmonia with fabulous players, and they were terrific. And so it was recorded at the Lucerne Festival in 1954, shortly before Furtwängler died. And he finally got it right. Finally, he got it right. It's not just that the performance shows his unique conception of the piece, which is always marvelous and very, very special, extremely personal. It's that it has the best playing and the best sonics and the closest thing to what a normal balance must have been hearing him live in concert, between the orchestra and the soloists and the chorus and the timpani and it sounds like what a real concert probably would have sounded like. Whereas things like, that horrible 1942 recording, the Nazi version, as I always call it, It's just, you cannot tell what may have been Furtwängler's idea from what is a result of the horrible engineering. And you want to give him credit for the horrible engineering? Go ahead. I want to hear what he wanted to do with the ninth. And I think that this is the performance that does it. By the way, one of you, started out with this whole business because I called it the Nazi performances, from that period, 1939 to 45. And you start with, Furtwängler wasn't a Nazi. He saved a bunch of Jewish players, blah, 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 blah. I'm not interested. I know he wasn't a Nazi. He detested the Nazis. However, he was a Nazi government employee, and he had no problem working for the Nazis and maybe working with the Nazis to a degree. That's what he did. There's no question about it. It's not up for debate. So were a lot of other people. Karajan, Böhm, they all were there. They all were employees of the Nazi regime. And they were all answerable to the Nazi regime. That's the way it was. And so Furtwängler was no saint, nor was he a demon. And that's the end of that conversation, too. Okay, folks? I don't want to hear, some of my best friends were Jewish. That disgusts me, that line of argumentation. That doesn't matter. He didn't save the players because they were Jewish. He saved the players because he wanted them in his orchestra. And he wanted the best players. He didn't care whether they were Jewish or not. That was his rationale. And so, I don't want to get into the morality of it. The fact is, he was there and he worked with those people, as did many, many, many others. But it seems that whenever you mention Furtwängler, here comes the hysteria. So anyway, enough of that. The final concert here consists of the Brahms Haydn variations and the First Symphony. This is with the NDR Orchestra, the North German Radio Orchestra, and it was recorded in the music hall, the hall in Hamburg, October 10th month, October 27th, 1951. It is an exceptional performance of Brahms' First, just a smoker. One of you took exception to the fact that I like performances where they play the crap out of the music, whatever, thinking that that's my only criterion for successful performance, which of course, that doesn't bear answering. But what people like about Furtwängler is exactly that quality, that he played the crap out of it, that he was louder and more rambunctious and more cataclysmic than anybody else. That is precisely the appeal that Furtwängler had, and that's what gets him over the hump in many performances where what happens between the volcanic climaxes is just a mess. Absolutely mess. One of the fascinating hypocrisies in the entire sort of Furtwängler cult mythos is that nobody talked more about unity and organic wholeness and continuity and all that stuff, and everyone mouths off with that. But no conductor is prized more for individual moments than Furtwängler is. People will say, oh my God, the finale of that, bar 67 of that piece. Oh, the climax of the recapitulation in the first movement. There's nothing like it anywhere. People go for Furtwängler because of individual isolated moments, not for entire conceptions and the wholeness and the subordination of individual details to the larger conception. No. It's extremely ironic. In fact, in many respects, Furtwängler, in the German repertoire in which he specialized, was the most hair-raisingly vulgar conductor of the entire 20th century. The way he starts Brahms' Third Symphony, completely disregarding Brahms' dynamics. It goes from one huge volcanic climax to the next, none of which Brahms actually notated, except for the last one. And it's fascinating. It's fascinating how when he does that and speeds up and slows down, it's always masterful. But if Leopold Stokowski did the same thing, he was just a vulgar theatrical showman. The only difference, of course, is that Stokowski would have done it right. He would have had fabulous playing and great sonics. Furtwängler gets away with it because the playing is shabby and the sonics suck. So he makes it sound as though the conception is so titanic that mere mortals can't even do it. Stokowski really does it, and he gets crap for it. I mean, does that make any sense to you? But that's the truth. That's what happens. That's what I've seen, and that's what you can see when you see the comments on this stuff. So anyway, I'm not going to belabor this any longer. This set of performances, if you can still find this, it may be around used or something because Tara's defunct, gives you some of the best of live Furtwängler after the war. And if you can't, some of it is in here. I don't recommend that you get this whole box, but some of it's in here. And Audita also has a very fine pressing of the individual on one CD of that fabulous Lucerne version of the Ninth. So you can get that too, separately. And that's a great way to get to know Furtwängler. Get these performances. Like I said, you can find them in different places. Pay attention to the dates. Try and find them. And if you can, you will be in wonderful shape to hear really the best of what he could achieve. And if you like it a lot, go get as much as you want. If you like some of it, go get some more, in addition to the performances that I recommended in talking about the big box that Warner just released. And you'll be in the best shape you need to be for Furtwängler. And it's really all you need. You're better off having a dozen of his best recordings than having 50 so-so ones. You really are. So keep on listening, folks. Thank you for joining me. Hope this cleared up some of the confusion. Take care.